Hi, I'm Mariana. I'm with my partner Sebas and Mariana. Today we'll be attempting to make some chocolate marshmallow Oreo cookies, like the recipe right here. This is expected, so let's see what the results are. But before we get into that, these will be the ingredients and amounts that we will be using. 2 eggs, 60 grams of smashed Oreos and 10 big chunks of Oreos, 200 grams of brown sugar, 50 grams of white sugar, 50 grams of chocolate chips, 370 grams of flour, 200 grams of butter, 8 pieces of marshmallow, and 4 grams of cornstarch. And now with all the ingredients, let's get into the kitchen. But first, let's measure them and do the mise en place. Now that I have everything measured, now let's start. The first step is to add the 200 grams of butter and start mixing until it's soft and fluffy. And now we're going to add the half of the white sugar. So we will be adding 25 grams of white sugar. And when it is incorporated, the butter and the 25 grams of white sugar, we add the rest. So the other half, the other 25 grams of white sugar.
Then, somewhere through that mixing, you have to add the 200 grams of brown sugar.
And continue mixing. You will have to keep that mixing for 2 minutes.
A few moments later.
After 2 minutes, it's time for breaking the eggs. So you have to add 1 egg, mix, and then the other eggs. Now the next step is to add the dry ingredients. So we're going to add the flour and also the cornstarch with this. So now we continue mixing. When your mixture stops looking like a mixture and now looks like a legit cookie dough mixture, what you're going to do is first smash the 60 grams of Oreo cookies. Then break your 10 cookies into chunks like quarters or so. And also incorporate the 50 grams of chocolate chips of your preference. Now what we're going to do is when our cookie dough looks something like this after mixing, finally, what we're going to do is to separate it into chunks of 140 grams. Okay, so I just finished measuring and weighing all the cookie dough, and you should get like 8 balls of 140 grams, but unfortunately for me, the last one was only like 80 grams or so something happened there. Now what we're going to do is to put a marshmallow like in the middle of each bowl, so it's like the cookie filling. And if you feel them like sticky, you should put it in the freezer for like 5 minutes or so, not really long time. But if not, just continue with the next step, that is putting them in the fridge for 3 minutes.
An eternity later.
Now that the 30 minutes in the fridge have passed, what we're going to do now is to put 4 cookies per round in the oven. And now this will go into the oven at 160 degrees for 10 minutes.
Well, these are the results of the first round. Unfortunately, I made 2 mistakes. The first one was not putting like cooking paper to protect the cookies for not sticking to the tray, and also I put them in the lowest level in the oven, so I expect them to be like quite burned from the down part. And in the second round, we made the corrections.
Now with these cookies, what we're going to do is to let them rest for 10-15 minutes approximately. Now let's talk about the results.
First of all, the ones from the first round are a little bit darker than the ones from the second round.
Also, some of them got actually burned, as you can see here. For example, this one, the marshmallow is completely melted. From the second round, I think all of them survived. You can see they look better from the back part.
So from the 8 cookies that we could bake, actually 4 were the ones that got the expected results without being burned or toast behind.
Now let's see how from the inside it looks like.
last but not least, we have to follow with the stoichiometry and all that chemical part. Okay, so now let's talk about the limiting and exit reactant. So in order to make this calculation, what we did was to take into account the amount that was required by the recipe of each ingredient and the amount that we bought of each ingredient. Since, for example, it required 200 grams of butter, what we did was to buy more than those 200 grams of butter. As it comes into packages, we had to make sure that the amount that we bought will fulfill the requirements, those minimum requirements. Then, what we did was to make the conversion factor to know how many cookies will be made to that amount that we bought, so in order to identify which was the ingredient that with the most that we bought will make the less cookies. So what we did was, for example, with the butter again, we bought 250 grams of butter. To make 8 cookies, that was the amount of the recipe, we required 200 grams of butter, and the amount of cookies that will be made through those 250 grams of butter will be 10 cookies. We repeated that process with brown sugar, white sugar, eggs, flour, the cornstarch, the chocolate chips, the Oreos, and the marshmallows. And the result of the limiting reactant will be the one that make the less cookies with the amount that we bought, which in this case was the butter. So those were the limiting reactants that if we wanted to continue further the recipe, we couldn't, because that will be the maximum amount that we will have to make without buying again. Now, to talk about the percent yield, first we calculated the theoretical yield that was given by the recipe, which was 8 cookies of 180 grams. And the actual yield refers to the actual amount that was produced after the experimentation, which in our case was only of 4 cookies since the rest got burned, which in this case gave us a 50% of percent yield because we only got a half of what was expected of being produced, which was influenced by the position in the oven of the cookies, also the loss of ingredients through the process, among other factors that we will explain in the reflection. And well, this was all for today's video. I hope you could know how to make some Oreo chocolate marshmallow cookies and also know a little bit about the stoichiometry and all that kind of stuff about the chemical part. Bye!